Hi everyone, welcome to the No Game No Pizza channel. From now on we'll be having pizza dates together once in a while, so I hope you don't mind my company. I promise to keep it fun. Today I'll take in a 20-minute journey into the mind-bending plot of Alan Wake 2, so grab a slice of pizza, get cozy, and let's dive into the spooky world of Bright Falls. So our story unfolds at the eerie city of Bright Falls, following a string of blood-curdling ritual murders. Enter our not-so-average FBI agent Saga Anderson, packing what she herself refers to as supernatural intuition. Together with her partner, Alex Casey, they're on a mission to unravel the mysteries behind the cult of the tree. Picture this: a crime scene near Cauldron Lake, a man's body tied to a table with his heart cut out. Saga learns from the local sheriffs that the victim is an ex-FBI agent, Robert Nottingale. Also, the Booker family, tourists in the area, reported the crime after witnessing the murder. While examining the surroundings, Saga and Alex find a mysterious manuscript that ominously mirrors all of their actions, suggesting that someone is watching them, and not in a hot kind of way like the You series on Netflix. A bit spooky, right? So they send Nottingale's body to the morgue and return to Bright Falls. In Bright Falls, Saga interviews witnesses and uncovers that the murderers belonged to the cult of the tree, identified by deer masks and a necklace with 2 triangles. Which, if you ask me, is a bit hipsterish, but who am I to judge, right? When it comes to examining the victim's body in the morgue, which by the way is looking less peaceful slumber and more zombie disco, the agents find yet another manuscript, not just anywhere but inside Nottingale's chest. We learn from the local detective Breaker that it's not the first time such manuscripts were found. Things take a wild turn when out of nowhere all the lights suddenly go out. Our helpful detective Breaker vanishes, and Nottingale's body gets back to life and attacks our agents. What happens next could only be described as supernatural chaos, where Saga shoots Nottingale, who instead of finally dying because cut out heart, remember, also vanishes into thin air. The man took ghosting to a whole new level, I'd say. Taken aback and entirely flabbergasted by the chain of not your typical Tuesday events, Saga and Alex are on a mission to locate the freshly back from the deathbed Nottingale. Now, hold on to your pizza because here's where it gets real wild. A parallel dimension located near Cauldron Lake. So the agents return to the original crime scene, where they decide to split up. Like the horror movies have taught us nothing.
Christ!
So Saga is the first one to find Nottingale, and she successfully eliminates him for good. But after defeating him, she experiences a vision involving Alan Wake, leading her to realize that he is in
danger. Thanks. Got it.
As the vision ends, reality alters, and Alan Wake, who has been missing for 13 years, suddenly appears from the lake. Our agents that, by the way, deserve a promotion because, let's be honest, if that were me or you, we wouldn't even show up after lunch if our morning looked anything like that. They escort Alan Wake to their headquarters in Bright Falls to question him about all the mysteries happening around. And if you thought, yay, finally some answers, then hold your horses because the game's focus shifts from Saga Anderson. Players are then transported to the Dark Place, an alternate dimension beneath Cauldron Lake, where they assume the role of Alan Wake. At this point, Alan Wake finds himself in a studio where an evening show is being filmed. He learns about his new book, Initiation, a tale he doesn't remember writing. Trying to leave this weird place, he soon realizes that he is trapped. Like it wasn't enough for the poor man's sanity, he is then transported to a locked writer's room, where he gradually recalls that he's in the Dark Place, an alternate dimension. But our man here, instead of giving up and going insane, decides to use his writing skills to create a new reality, crafting chapters like pizzas, cheesy, action-packed, and occasionally burned. He manages to transport himself out of the room and also to find a way out of the Dark Place. In Alan Wake's books, the main character was Alex Casey, but now Alan has decided to step into this role. Using his writing, he travels to New York, in Dark Place, as a detective, creating a narrative page by page to find his way back to reality. So the first narrative focuses on the investigation of a missing FBI detective who is revealed to be Robert Nottingale. Alan Wake constructs a detailed story of Nottingale's abduction and murder, forming a coherent plot. This leads him to the crime scene where he experiences a vision involving Saga Anderson. Remember the one Saga witnessed at Cauldron Lake after defeating Nottingale? So exactly that one. In the vision, Alan asks Saga for help and senses a change in the Dark Place. Later on, a route to the Parliament Tower, where he once lived with his wife Alice, becomes accessible. In his apartment, Alan discovers photos and videos left by Alice, leading to the realization that his evil counterpart, Scratch, has been tormenting Alice in reality. Feeling close to an escape and the possibility of saving Alice, Alan is stopped by Scratch, who forces him to return to the beginning. Determined, Alan must now compose a new narrative, aiming for a more favorable outcome. The story then shifts back to Saga Anderson, Alex Casey, and Alan Wake in the real world. As you recall, Saga and Alan Wake met at the Cauldron Lake, and then they proceeded to the headquarters in Bright Falls to discuss all the surrounding chaos.
Okay, let's recap what you've told us so far, Ellen. For the past 13 years, you've been trapped in a nightmare dimension called the Dark Place. Yeah. It's like New York, but it's not New York. And can be reached from the bottom of Cauldron Lake, but it's not really under the lake. And after all this time, you've managed to get out.
Yeah.
But so has your evil doppelganger. Mr. Scratch? Or is it the Dark Presence?
Both. It's interchangeable. He's Scratch when he looks like me, but he can change into this other form.
And Scratch, the Dark Presence, wants to rewrite the world in his own image.
Which would be in your image, as he looks just like you.
And turn the world into a fucking nightmare.
During Deerfest, which is scheduled to take place in a couple of days. You got out of the Dark Place by writing a novel, the pages we've been finding. But your double edited it into a horror story that's now changing reality, taking over people, making them crazy, bringing the Dark Place to Bright Falls.
Yes, fiction coming in contact with the Dark Place can change reality. The story is coming true, soaking into everything like darkness when night falls.
Which brings us to your magical light switch.
The clicker. Magical doesn't quite cover it. Scratch wants it to bring about his ending. That can't happen. If I can get the clicker, I can send him back to the Dark Place, make all this shit go away.
Wake also gives Saga the manuscript, revealing that a mystical object known as the Clicker, because that's a suitable name for a mystical object, of course, is now in the hands of the cultists. Sensing a new mission, Saga is on her way to retrieve the Clicker, while Alan remains in Bright Falls under Alex Casey's watch. As our girl quests for the elusive Clicker, she approaches the locals for information. But for some reason, everyone's treating Saga like she's their lifelong best friend or something, even though she's here for the first time in her life. Seems a bit fishy if you ask me. Locals speak of the death of her daughter, a fact that contradicts Saga's belief that her daughter is safely waiting for her at home. Trying to make any sense out of this, she decides to use her superpowers. And you guessed it. Or maybe not. But if you did, then you know that she discovers that Town's memories are manipulated by Alan Wake's written words. Talk about a plot twist. But if you thought, even for a second, that it would be enough to scare our girl boss here, then I'm happy to let you know that that's not the case. I'm telling you, she deserves a promotion or at least a paid vacation, and a cake on top. Despite all the unsettling encounters, Saga remains focused on her quest for the Clicker. Her journey takes her to a trailer park, where she meets two weird old men who claim to be her relatives. Pretty skeptical, and assuming they're as delusional as the others she has met, Saga decides to leave them and investigate a trailer that she supposedly once occupied. Inside, she finds a newspaper reporting the drowning of her daughter. Overwhelmed, understandably so, Saga tries to call her daughter, but the call doesn't go through. She then attempts to call her husband, and you guessed it, silence as well, which okay, not very promising. You'd think they'd give the poor girl a break, but well, Saga's anxious thoughts are impolitely interrupted as she spots a cultist in the distance. Determined, she decides to follow this cultist, who eventually vanishes into the overlap. To reach him, she undergoes a series of trials, and upon entering this other dimension, she encounters yet another vision of Alan Wake. In this vision, Alan says that he has written Saga into his narrative, charging her with the monumental task of saving her family and the world. I'm not sure, should we even pretend that we're surprised by this? The game's called Alan Wake 2, and who's responsible for saving the world? You got it right, your girly girl Saga. After enduring several confrontations, she successfully secures the clicker, which is basically the key to ending this ongoing nightmare. Meanwhile, in Bright Falls, the Tree Cult is launching an attack on Alex Case and Alan Wake. The FBI agent orders Alan Wake to stay inside, while he engages in a shootout with the cultists. After a while, Alan Wake senses the approach of Scratch and goes after Alex Casey to warn him of the impending danger. However, along the way, he loses consciousness due to a severe headache. Taking advantage of Wake's condition, one of the cultists attempts to kill him. Fortunately, Saga Anderson intervenes just in time. She knocks the knife out of the cultist's hand and proceeds to remove his mask, revealing the killer to be Ilmo Koskelo, a local businessman. Ilmo explains to Saga that he and his brother Yako created the cult to protect Bright Falls and Watery from the possessed entities emerging from Cauldron Lake. However, Saga doesn't really have time to question him further, as the FBC agents appear and inform her that from now on, the case is in their hands, and her job here is done. But of course, Saga's not ready to let go, especially with her daughter's life at stake. She heads to her newfound relatives, Tor and Odin, to learn more about the clicker. However, the dark presence has engulfed Tor into the overlap. Saga descends once again, this time to save her grandfather. Then, as you've all probably guessed it, she gets another vision, this time of Alan Wake from the past. Saga tries her best to convince him to rewrite the story, but she fails. Nevertheless, she successfully rescues Tor, which means we'll finally get some answers. First of all, Tor confirms Wake's words about the clicker's ability to rewrite the story. He also explains that the clicker is nothing more than an amplifier of sorts, an enhancer for any form of art. And last but not least, Tor and Odin indeed turn out to be Saga's relatives. They reveal to her the truth about her superpower inherited from her mother. Saga's mother had a falling out with Tor, her mother's father if anyone got confused, so she took her daughter and left. She wanted Saga to live a normal life, and therefore she concealed the truth about her abilities and her family as well.
Thanks for telling me this, Tor. I need to go find Wake to stop this.
The old gods of Asgard will be ready to help. Me and my bro will bring the rock when you need it. Remember.
Saga heads to the police station, convinced that only with Alan Wake's help and the magic clicker can she prevent her daughter's death. But upon reaching the station, she discovers that it has been overrun by a dark presence. There is a bottle, and our girl manages to save an FBC agent, Estevez. Estevez allows Saga to speak with Wake, who is detained in a cell. However, in another plot twist, the man in the cell is not Wake but Scratch, the evil one, remember?
Don't fucking give it to him! He's a fucking monster, Saga! There it is! We've been waiting for you, motherfucker! I'm gonna fucking destroy you!
She confronts Scratch, but despite all her best efforts, he still manages to escape. So putting two and two together, Saga realizes that since Scratch is present in this reality, Alan Wake must be still trapped in the dark place. Determined to save him, Saga decides to use the clicker, which requires a work of art to function effectively. She turns to her newly discovered relatives, the old gods of Asgard, and requests them to compose a song that could help rescue Alan Wake.
Tor, I need the old gods of Asgard. I need a very special song.
Hell yeah! The tour bus is already loaded, and we've said our goodbyes. Ready to hit the road, just like the old times, baby.
The old gods gladly agree and later on perform the song at the Cauldron Lake, with Saga using the clicker to amplify its effect. And I can't believe I just said all that with a straight face. Anywho, despite their efforts and the successful performance, Alan Wake does not appear. At this point, the game once again transports us into the eerie realm of the Dark Place. It becomes clear that Alan Wake's initial storyline has failed, which means there's a need to create a fresh narrative. The man of the day, Alan Wake begins a new adventure starting in the studio. Then, out of the blue, he gets a call from a payphone telling him to head to the Ocean View Hotel. There he meets a filmmaker, Thomas Zane, who suggests the hotel could be the perfect setting for Alan's story. Inspired, Alan dives into creating a fresh and wild tale, all centered around some mystical, immersive performance at the Ocean View Hotel. After successfully completing the storyline, Parliament Tower reappears. Alan discovers new videos in his apartment featuring Alice discussing her belief in the existence of another world beyond our own, a dark place. She explains how she uses her photographs to capture this elusive dimension and intends to showcase it to the others at the exhibition that she titled Dark Place. Following this, Alan Wake goes back to his writing room and discovers a fully written manuscript written by none other than himself. This eerie manuscript describes dark presence escaping from the dark place and getting in control of Bright Falls. Alan Wake realizes that the manuscript was not written by him, but, you guessed it again, by his evil double Scratch. Panicking, Alan sits down to edit this work in a desperate attempt to prevent the impending disaster. He includes our girl, Saga Anderson, as a character in the story, hoping she can assist in saving the city. However, the writer is unable to complete the editing before Scratch suddenly barges in, shooting Alan Wake and running off with the manuscript. This, not so pleasant to say the least, event makes Alan Wake even more determined to get out of the dark place as quickly as it's physically possible. Alan Wake starts weaving a fresh narrative, heading back to the TV show studio. Seeking advice from Zane again, he is directed to the cinema where Zane's film plays. Alan takes the suggestion, diving into a fresh storyline involving Alex Casey and himself. In any case, the story concludes, marking the writer's comeback to Parliament Tower. Along the journey, the payphone rings again, and future Alan Wake advises placing Alice's photo near the statue for future benefits. Present-day Alan, following the advice, heads back home and finds a new video of Alice. In it, she reveals a tragic end by jumping off a cliff.
Alice was dead. Scratch tortured her until she couldn't stand it anymore. Until she broke. And all that time, she thought it was me. Scratch was still here. He hadn't escaped the dark place yet. He was scratching my edits out of return.
Now, this scene looks familiar, doesn't it? And I think Ellen is catching up as well.
I had seen this before. This was not Scratch. This was me. Caught in a loop. I had stopped myself trying to fix the manuscript. I was the one haunting Alice. It was always me. I killed her.
Now the game brings us back to Saga Anderson's reality. Just a quick reminder that her grand plan with the Old God song and the clicker didn't go as expected. When she began investigating why this was the case, she figured out that the plan actually worked, but Alan Wake showed up in the past. It hit her. Alan Wake and Scratch were the same person, with dark presence residing within Alan Wake. That considered, it was decided to lure Dark Presence into a trap using FBC gear to kick it out of Alan Wake's body. Saga nailed it, but guess what? Dark Presence jumps onto Alex Casey's body, swipes the clicker, and tosses Saga into the Cauldron Lake. Next thing we know, Saga finds herself in the dark place. Meanwhile, Alex Casey heads to the Bright Falls to put his plan to take over Bright Falls into action. Alan Wake, all determined, decides to chase Scratch, who's now all cozy in Alex Casey's body, to find the manuscript and rewrite the ending. Dark Bright Falls, mysterious searching, and voila, Alan finds a writer's room where he proceeds with his writing. While Alan is writing his soul away, Saga Anderson wakes up in the dark place to the sound of a ringing payphone. The voice on the phone advises Saga to get an item near the statue close to the Parliament Tower, hinting that it's necessary for a successful ending. You all know the drill by now. If Saga gets a task, Saga's on it in no time. At the said location, she finds a clicker and a light bullet. Superpowers activated, Sega gets in contact with Alan Wake, and they brainstorm the best way to finish the story. Alan Wake suggests that, as it's a horror tale, there must be a sacrifice made by the characters. Sega agrees, but puts a condition. Her daughter and Alex Casey survive. Deal sealed, Sega hops through a portal to join Alan Wake.
Let's do this. I have to be the one to do it.
I feel like I've always been on this journey. Okay. It must end here. This darkness. What lies under the surface now shifts. A play of shadows catching my eye, thrusting my face into the water. He's here. It's shockingly cold. Past the mirror of the surface. And I will see.
Casey?
Scratch! Now!
A white, searing light of truth that for a flash pierces the shadows and reveals the hidden horror. And in that moment of silence, the whispered message finally heard.
Come on, you motherfucker! Come on! Come on!
What if there's nothing waiting to be revealed? The play of shadows fool us all, subterfuge to get our price of admission. Darkness not as a monster, but as emptiness. We're none the wiser. No answers, no truths. The hero turns to look inside, is destroyed by what he sees, and is redeemed. Saga said we're both heroes. I'll pay that price. So will she. We are here to kill the monster. I pray nothing comes after this. Nothing will sleep. This is how we win. Is it too easy? What if this is still the dark place? Another dream to wake up from, always coming back to the beginning. The memory of what came before burned away by this terrible realization. Maybe it's a mercy, forgetting. To know nothing when we loop around, back to...
Is it over? Anderson?
But wait a second, there is actually more. Post-credits, Alan Wake's wife is actually alive, revealing she ventured into the dark place. The stage is set for an incredible finale. Take a look.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
And believe it or not, this is still not the end. Why, you ask? Well, because it's not a loop. Apparently it's a spiral. So we go through the game a second time, and the ending changes. I promise this time it's definitely the last one. At last in my video. As for Alan Wake's world, I'm not so sure.
When the bullet of light blew the darkness out of the crater of my skull, the dark presence was born from the remains, feeding on the horror around it to grow. Influenced me. I was lost in my work. The link was severed when I finished Return, but the dark presence was hungry for more. And I was missing the small part of myself that it had been born from. Alice, love is strange. Even apart, we're still together in our memories. We put each other through hell to set us free. Again and again. Different versions of us. Alice helped me get there. Where I needed to be. It has taken so long. The process to change reality is so delicate, to be true in just the right way and still find a way past our flaws. So many drafts, so many photographs, so many lives lived outside of time, an eternity apart on this journey to finally arrive here.
I'm sorry, but it's giving. I've got a bullet in my skull, but in this economy I can only afford to give myself a poetic pep talk and get back to work.
Is it over? Anderson?
Logan? Logan! Are you alright?
I had a terrible nightmare. Can you come home, Mom?
Oh, baby. It's over now. You're alright. I'm here. I'm on my way home. I love you. She's alright.
Look who's back to the capitalistic world.
The ending worked. Scratch is gone.
At last.
Thank you, my love. And so I return. With me I bear the torch of knowledge, the light, the miracle illuminated, the master of two worlds. No, the master of many worlds.
Well, I'd say that was one hell of a roller coaster, wasn't it? Saga with her psychic powers fighting evil left and right, the boss girl she is, Alan with his inner darkness and evil twin. Let's be honest, the boy needs therapy. And of course the dark place that, now that I think of it, looks way too similar to my workplace, and that's a bit concerning. But oh well, thanks for sticking around till the end. Don't forget to leave in the comment section who's your favorite character and why is it Saga Anderson. On this note, I should probably apologize for keeping you longer than promised, but you know what they say, time flies in a good company, and yours was the best. I hope to enjoy it again next time on No Game No Pizza channel. Bye bye!